Hello everyone. So welcome again to another concepts in biology video. So for today we will going to, or in this video we will going to find out how this, or what are the mechanisms of this evolutionary changes. All right. So with that, let's get started. Now, what is mechanism? Mechanism is a method or means of doing something. Alright, so, and also, it is something, it is a way that something works. Alright, so this is the process. Alright, so this is the process, the procedures, the methods that is involved in doing something. Alright, so that is involved in doing something which gets the work done. Alright, so in this particular discussion that we have, we will going to find out what are the mechanisms, alright, what are the mechanisms that are involved in the evolutionary process or evolutionary process of an organism. Alright, so meaning to say, in other words, we will talk about here the agents of evolution. Alright, so we have the agents of evolution. What are the factors, or what are the things, alright? What are the things that the organism will encounter in order for that organism to evolve over time? Alright, so before we go to that, let's take a look at this one first. The pictures that we have right here in the art of deception. Alright, so how many frogs do you see? Okay, so you can write it down in the comment section on how many frogs do you see in the picture that we have right here. Alright, so so you already write down your comment. So there are 3 frogs on the picture. We have 1, 2, and 3. So these frogs are blended to the dead leaves that we have right here in the picture. Alright, so let's go to the next picture. Alright, so what do you see on the picture? Can you tell me on the comment section what do you see on the picture? Alright, so you can pause this video if you want to. So the one on the picture is a walking stick. So this is a walking stick. Alright, so the walking stick here, this is the eyes. Alright, and this is its body. Yan. So it looks like a branch of a tree, but basically that is an insect. Alright, so next one. So what do you see here? Okay, so alright, so you are correct. So what you see here is a grasshopper. Alright, so it looks like a leaf of a plant. So it is somehow blended, or it looks like a leaf of a plant, or in this picture. Alright, so this grasshopper that we have right here. Next one. What do you see on the picture? Alright, so probably you'll be able to find it already. So what we have right here is the a large insect which looks like a tree bark that we have right here. So we have there this insect, this one. Okay, so which is perfectly blended to the tree bark's color that we have right here. Alright, next one. Now what do you see here? Alright, so probably what we have right here is a caterpillar, and I know what you are thinking. You can say that this is a snake, but it is a caterpillar. Now, this is a caterpillar that looks like a snake. They tend to form, or they tend to do mimicry. So mimicry, or they try to copy something which is a large. It try to copy something, a larger organism, something like that, and then try to scare off their predators. All right, so this is a caterpillar, and it performs mimicry, and it looks like a snake over this picture. All right, next one. All right, what do you see here in the picture? Alright, so that's right. So this is an insect. Alright, this is an insect that is seated on the tree bark. Alright, so as you can see here from far. Alright, so if you look this one from far, or by far, so it looks like a tree bark, but basically it is an insect that is blending on the tree bark. Alright, so what did you see on those pictures? Alright, those organisms on the pictures tend to perform these incredible things that you have seen there. The art of camouflage and the art of mimicry. Alright, so this camouflage and mimicry ability of some organisms are ways of these organisms in order to avoid predator. Therefore, increases their chances of survival. Now, those abilities are product of this mechanism of evolution that was done million years ago in order to come up or to do perfectly that particular activity. Now, we have right here the 4 ways. Alright, actually there are 5 ways. The fifth one is the non-random mutation, or non-random mating rather. Mating. Alright, so you can add this one. Excuse me. Now, in this particular process, the allele frequency in the population may change due to the 4 fundamental forces of evolution. Please take note that the allele is the form of a trait. Alright, this is the form of your genes. Alright, so for example, we have the height. So the allele for height is either tall and short. Alright, so please do take note of that. So this is the gene and this is the alleles. Alright, so with that, let's get started. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so there are 4 mechanisms of evolution. So we will going to start in the first one, which is called the natural selection. Alright, so now these 4 processes or these 4 mechanisms that we have right here contributes to the changes in the allele frequency in the population. Alright, it depends on what of this mechanism, or it depends on what mechanism it is on that situation, but it will likely to change the frequency in that particular population. Alright, so let's start first with natural selection. Now, this is one of the idea Charles Darwin brought out about his journey on the Galapagos Island. Now, in the natural selection mechanism, evolution acts through natural selection. Now, the opposite of this one is the artificial selection, in which there is an intervention, there's an external intervention on the evolutionary process that is happening on the organism. So, in a natural selection, this is natural, so it means that the nature will select who will prove to be advantageous to survive and who will prevail in the future generation. That advantageous trait that survive over time due to the environmental challenges that the nature gives will survive, and they will produce or reproduce in the next generation. Alright, so they will likely to be successful in terms of reproduction. So, what do we have right here is that nature will select these genetic qualities that will be advantageous to its survival for that organism. Alright, so let's take it, let's have an example here. So, the Galapagos finches is one of the product of this particular mechanism, which is called the natural selection. Now, in here, we have a process called adaptive radiation. Alright, so these finches undergo adaptive radiation, so that's the reason why they develop different eating habits on different food source that they see on their surrounding. Alright, so most of these finches, all of them came from their ancestral seed-eating ground finch. Now, the reason why there are so many species of finches that is produced here, it's because of changes in the environment. The environmental challenge that these birds encountered in the process enables them to develop and evolve through that particular situation, and enables them to form different species coming out of one ancestral species. Alright, so what we have right here are from one, it gives off several kinds of finches, and mainly the differences is by the food that they eat and the look of their beaks that we have right here. As you can see, the beaks are very different from each other, and that is because of the food that they eat on that particular area. Alright, next one. All right, so selection is also done here in peppered moths that we have right here. So the story behind this peppered moth is most of the peppered moth in London during that time are colored white or white colored peppered moth. All right, so when industrial revolution kicks in, so there are a lot of soot. So the soot or the black particles that we have right here coming out from coal burning, something like that. Now this soot covers up all the tree barks and all the buildings or wall of every buildings that present on that time, thus making this peppered moth a good target or a good food for some birds like the crow or some form of it's a bird. All right, so the birds were likely to eat a light colored moth, which is cannot be or cannot do or they cannot camouflage or they cannot blend in when there's with their surrounding. Now because of this particular event, because of this particular challenge, now another group of peppered moth give rise, or this white peppered moth give rise to another group of peppered moth due to this challenge, and that is now the dark colored peppered moth. Now the dark colored ones are very advantageous on this situation. It is due to the idea that these dark ones are very successful in blending their surrounding. All right, so now when the environment goes back again to its goes back again to normal, it becomes light again. So what happens to this dark peppered dark colored moth? It becomes a good target now to this moth eating birds. All right, so that's the story behind this peppered moth. And selection happens in nature. So the nature selects who will survive in these moths that we have right here. Alright, now one process or one thing that those organisms will do on these particular challenges that we have is called adaptation. Alright, so this process is this process whereby a population becomes better suited to its habitat. Now, if an organism is better suited to its habitat, therefore it can survive and it will have a successful reproduction in the long run. Alright, so and the feature or the body feature that the organism used in order to adapt to that particular environment will be passed down now to the next generation of its offspring. Alright, so this is the adaptation. Now, natural selection must work with, or adaptation must work in order to achieve what they call the natural selection. Alright, so adaptation is there always. Alright. Now, there are several types of adaptations that we have right here. One is changes in habitat. So, alright, if there's a change in habitat, what the tendency of an organism is to if the habitat or if the environment change, the tendency of the organism is to find another habitat or adapt to that particular changes so that it will survive, or else it will likely to be extinct. Alright, so now if they be able to adapt, so therefore there will be a genetic changes on the body of the organism. Therefore, there will be a new group of organism that will give rise in the long run. Alright, so the first one is the dinosaur. The reason why they become extinct because they not be able to adapt to that environment that these changes brought about this particular in that situation. All right. So another one, this polar bear that we have right here. This is a product of genetic changes due to changes in habitat as well. Alright, so the reason why they have white furs over here, it's because white furs are advantageous on this environment, which is the icy or snowy environment that we have right here. So that's the reason why they likely to survive in the long run in that particular environment. So that is habitat changes. Next one. The second one is intimate relationship. So this symbiotic relationship, or this relationship between two organisms that we have right here, these are very important ways of adaptation. All right, one organism can take or can exploit the ability of another organism in order to survive. Alright, so one of them is mimicry, the one that you see earlier. The other one is parasitism, so the tapeworm, the roundworm, something like that. They evolved to be like that. It's because of the ability or the requirement of survival that we have. All right, so parasitism. So we have here host and parasite relationship. Next one, the predator and the prey relationship. So one organism is a predator and the other one is a prey. The other one is symbiosis. Alright, so in a symbiotic relationship, an organism may or may not gain from this particular relationship. So meaning to say, it always involves two organisms in the long run. And we have this mutualism, and also we have this pollination syndrome. Alright, so these are some examples of intimate relationship, or more so, it is called co-adaptation. So why is it co-adaptation? It came from the word co, means cooperative adaptation. So if one survived, alright, the other one survived. If one didn't survive, then the other one will die as well. Alright, so this is the second type of adaptation. So one example here is this praying mantis, which is blending on its surrounding, which is camouflage, form of camouflage, something like that. Alright, next one, the sunflower. So these beautiful petals found in these flowers are used to attract insects. So this is a clear example of co-adaptation. Now, without these petals, this sunflower will not might not likely to survive in the long run. Alright, so or if they will not be able to reproduce in the long run. Alright, next one, the Rafflesia. So we all know that Rafflesia has a foul odor smell. So even though it has a foul odor smell, it doesn't attract a butterfly or something like that. But it attracts flies, and the flies are the agent of their pollination, or pollinating agents on this process. Alright, so again, co-adaptation. Alright, the third type of adaptation is the internal adaptation. So one of those examples here, we have the brain function, temperature regulation, and the effectivity of the immune system. So what we are talking about here is the ability of the internal organs to adapt to a certain changes in the environment and regulate the body temperature, or regulate the body itself of the organism in order for them to survive. So that's the reason why we have here what they call the cold-blooded animals, the warm-blooded animals, and some brain of these animals are used in different purposes. For example, in doves, their brain contains minute amount of magnetite in order to find out the Earth's magnetic field and be able to migrate every time there is a winter season on that particular area, to avoid that winter season. So some plants have effective immune system in order for them to be protected to some pathogens and something like that. Alright, so these are internal adaptations of some organisms that be able them to survive in that particular environment, or in situation given to that particular environment. Alright, so the brain itself has different, the human brain as well has different function, and this function depends on what kind of situation are that particular organism underwent. Alright, so next one. The eye. Alright, so the eye took a long or a million years before it became like this that we have right here, which is a complex one. Alright, next one. The fourth type of adaptation is what they call the compromise and conflict. Alright, so let me clarify that one. So camouflage is part of the fourth type of adaptation. The mimicry is on the second one. Alright, excuse me. Now, in this compromise and conflict between adaptation, so what we have right here is, alright, so to avoid being eaten, you should blend to the environment, or should I say, in order for your in order for your offspring to be genetically dominant, excuse me, in order for your offspring to be genetically dominant, so you will select a mate, or you will select a worthy mate in order to gain that particular characteristics that you need for the offspring to inherit to that particular parent. So that's why there are some organisms that underwent sexual selection. All right, so what we have right here, excuse me. All right, so what we have right here in this particular type of adaptation is that all right, so we have the organism will need to adapt in order to increase its chances for survival. All right, by doing blending to the environment and by selecting a particular mate in order to inherit that particular dominant gene or dominant trait that they need. All right, so one of those is the walking, the the insect that we have right here. So it looks like a leaf, but it isn't a leaf. So this is an insect which is blended perfectly to this particular background that we have right here. So next one, peacocks. Alright, so did you know that only the male peacock has this kind of decorations on its feather? Now, it's because of one thing. The one who has good decorations or good feather arrangement on this male peacock, so will mate all the female peacocks on that particular population. Alright, so it means that the more coloration or the more decoration that the peacocks that the male peacocks has, it tells the female that it has a very dominant trait. Alright, so it increases the chance of survival by the species. Alright, so meaning to say that an organism can be able to survive by just selecting some worthy traits on this particular situation. Okay, next. Okay, another type of camouflage done by this lizard over here. Alright, so in that particular environment. Next one. Alright, now those particular adaptation, alright, so the natural selection cannot do itself without its final or its process. Its process is called the adaptive radiation. Now, when an organism adapt to that environment, alright, when the organism adapt to that environment, what happens is it will create changes to its body, and it will completely diversify rapidly from an ancestral point of view. Alright, so it means that this particular organism from one ancestor, now if they be able to adapt to a new set of environment that the environment challenged them to adapt, so it will create multitude of new forms. When we talk about new forms, so meaning to say new form of organism, but the same somehow it looks the same, but the organism looks different from its ancestral species. Now, what it makes is it creates new, alright, it creates new new organism that will be suitable for that resources available to that particular new environment that the organism lives. Alright, so it opens, alright, it opens to new environmental niches. So what do you mean by niches? This is the role of the organism in the environment. Alright, so meaning to say the more roles, alright, the more roles in a particular environment that the organism has, meaning to say the more chances of survival to that particular environment that the environment can give to that organism. Alright, so that is adaptive radiation. So it starts from the ancestral species and then gives rise to a new one. Alright, so in that particular process of adaptive radiation, the formation of new species, we called it the speciation. Alright, so this is the process by which new biological species arise. Now, where did this species arise? It came from ancestor, and the new species arise from them. Alright, so from that ancestor. Alright, so that is speciation. Now, this process of speciation that we have right here, which is done in the which is done in some which can be seen in some islands in the in some environmental islands that like we have right here. So one species that we have right here find a new place on another or find a new place over here, and eventually they develop due to the idea that this particular environment has different temperature, has different food source or whatsoever. So what happens is from one group of organism, it became two now, and this letter B that we have right here is different in terms of both genetic and phenotypic characteristics of this organism that we have right here. Now, when an organism transfer again to a new place, then this organism tends to adapt to that particular place. Then another group of species arise due to the challenges that this environment gives them. And as the process go on, alright, so as the process go on, what happens here is some organisms are, some new species of organisms coming from the ancestral ones are starting to form now, and some of them are not some of them are not by changing habitat anymore, but mating or random mating with the species that we have right here, thus producing a new form of organism that we have right here. So eventually, in the long run, from one group of organism, there are now 1, 2, 3, 4 group. Alright, so and 5. So there are now 5 groups of organism that happen in this particular process. And this process of forming new species in the particular new environment due to adaptive radiation is what they call speciation. Alright, so that's the idea here. Alright, so one example are the finches studied by Charles Darwin. Alright, and another one is the bear family. So there are, if you know only one type of bear, which is the brown bear that usually seen in some movies and some documentaries, well, you are wrong. There are a lot of type of bears which has a different types of food that they eat. For example, the sun bear eats termites, alright, and ants, and the slot bears eats plant. Then the polar bear lives on the Arctic region, alright. So the spectacle bear is somehow eats fish and something more of a plant, and some American black bear eats fish as well. And the giant panda is mostly, some of them are eating bamboos and other stuffs related to plant life. Alright, so meaning to say that these particular bears be able to adapt to their new surrounding and be able to somehow create new species in the long run. So this is a process called speciation. Another one is the cats, yeah, or are the cats rather. So the cats that we have right here, there are a lot of cats in the world. Alright, not only the domesticated cat that we have or we find around us, but also the tigers, the lions, the panthers, and so on and so forth. These are all cats. Alright, they belong to cat family. Alright, and the reason why there are so many is because of speciation. Another one is are the dogs. Alright, so dog family are very large as well. So it started from an ancestral wolf and became domesticated. That's the reason why we have dogs right now that we all know, the domesticated one. So we have as well the dingoes, alright, the foxes, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so not only the wolf, not only the dog that we all know. Alright, so we have a lot of dog, alright, species around the world. Alright. Alright, so that is the dog family. Alright, so that is your natural selection. Alright, and the natural selection only works, it works to hand in hand together with adaptive radiation in order to achieve to give rise to a new species called speciation. Alright, so very important here in natural selection is that nature will select who will survive, and an organism must adapt to that particular environment in order to survive as well, or even not to survive, even create new species in the long run. Alright, so that is natural selection. Now the second one that we have right here is what they call genetic drift. Now in genetic drift, this is a random event that happens by chance in nature that influences changes in allele frequency within the population as a result of sampling error from generation to generation. So this is a random event that happens. So what is this random event? Alright, like earthquake, man-made event, or asteroid impact on Earth, alright, hurricane, alright, so volcanic eruption, alright, so these are some random events that is present in nature that influences the changes in the allele frequency. Alright, so what is this allele frequency? This allele frequency can be seen in a population of an organism. Alright, so if the population has a variation, therefore the allele frequency on that particular population is very large. Alright, so what is this genetic drift? Let's take a look at this one. Alright, so in this process, it may cause variance or variation in genes to disappear completely. So what it means is that what does this one means? Genetic drift can cause some alleles to be disappear completely or completely extinct. Alright, so which means that in random process by nature, some genes will completely eradicate or completely be eradicated due to these factors that we have right here. So what happens is when a particular gene disappears, it will reduce the genetic variability. So, meaning to say, the allele frequency in that population will likely to be small. Alright, so in contrast to a natural selection, environmental or adaptive pressures do not drive the changes due to genetic drift. So, what do we have right here? So, meaning to say that, alright, so natural selection, in natural selection, the nature pressure or put pressure to the organism in order for it to survive. Alright, so, or in order for it to adapt and survive on that particular environment. But in genetic drift, it's not. Due to the idea that it happens randomly, so meaning to say there are no pressures that changes the genes of this particular group of organism. There are no pressures. Why there are no pressures? Because this is random. Alright, you can tell when the earthquake will happen. You can tell when the typhoon will come. Alright, you can tell when a fire or an asteroid will go down here on Earth. Alright, so this particular events that we have right here cannot put pressure on that particular organism. So, meaning to say, they are randomly, the alleles will be randomly selected in the process. Alright, so that is genetic drift. Alright, and there are two kinds of genetic drift. We have the population bottleneck and the founder's effect. Alright, so these are some examples of random drift that have significant effect in a small population. Alright, so let's start first with the bottleneck effect. Alright, so it occurs when there is a sharp decline in the population size due to environmental factors such as natural disasters, earthquakes, so on and so forth. Alright, so like what we are happening right now, habitat destruction, some habitat of some organisms are destroyed in order to give way for farming, like what is happening in Indonesia. Alright, so in order to give way for farming, this habitat of some organisms are destroyed, and the chances or the allele frequency of this organism is somehow drastically change in size. Alright, so, or change in frequency in the long run. So, in this case, this is a random effect that will have an effect on this particular allele frequency. So, the first one is what they call bottleneck effect. So I have right here a bottle. So this is a bottle, and what we have right here inside the bottle is a group of organism. which is represented by seeds right here. So what are these? All right, so I have two groups of organism with different alleles. So this one, all right, so this is a corn, and this one is a white bean, and another one is a red bean. All right, so this represents three different alleles present in that population. So meaning to say the alleles over this population that we have right here are very or they are varied in the long run, or after all. Excuse me. Alright, so they are varied after all. Now, why is bottleneck effect? So this is the bottleneck, and when I invert this one, so and open up this this cap over here, this bottleneck effect that we have right here, this bottleneck represents this environmental factors that we are talking about here, and this is by random. Alright, so this is by random. So if I open the cup right here, if I open this cup right here, some of the alleles will not be able to go out, and some alleles will be able to go out for the next generation. For example, if I open this one and these two are the only alleles that survive on that process, then therefore, is there a possibility that there will be a red bean that will survive in the long run? Alright, so you can write it down in the comment section, and you can pause this video to think of that. Alright, so probably, alright, so since these are different allele, you cannot see any red at all. So meaning to say that the next generation will likely to be all red. Alright, or let me clarify, all or the next generation of these two organisms that survive that bottleneck effect, so this bottleneck that we have right here, like earthquakes, tornado, and so on and so forth, that decimated this whole population on top that we have right here. So now, if these two are the only survivors on that process, then therefore the next generation will likely to be like this. No more red in the long run. Alright, so this one. Alright, so no more red. Now, to further discuss that one, so let's take a look at this picture. You can read this part over here, or you can look at this picture if you want to. Alright, so as you can see on the first generation, there are varied. So just like what we have right here. And this is the generation 1. Alright. Alright, now because of this bottleneck event that we have right here, take note, this is random event. And because of this random event, random alleles, so I will select random alleles from this particular set of population. Now, if this one survived, then so be it. If this one survived, then so be it. If this one only is the only survivor, then so be it. So why is this? Why is it like that? It's because this is a random event. Then therefore, if it is a random event, it will select random alleles in the long run. All right. So meaning to say that the event is not or independent to the selection of alleles. That is independent. So there's a bottleneck event. Then the alleles that we have right here are crossed out. So what happened is in the surviving population, these are the only alleles that are that remains in the long run in the process. Then completely, if this one is a recessive allele, like the small r that we have right here, then therefore it will be masked out, and eventually in the final population, in the next generation that we have, they are all look like this, no more like this. Alright, so you see now the effect of the bottleneck event. Now, what happened is, from a large diversity, it becomes now small diversity of genes that we have right here. Alright, so that's the effect of your bottleneck event. So in a population, alright, so in a population, it is more important that the population should have a large genetic diversity. Whenever this bottleneck event happens, what it will give in the long run, still there will be still some genes or genetic diversity that will go through. Alright, so that's the population bottleneck. Alright, the second one is the founder's effect. This is the loss of genetic variation that occurs when new population is established by a new or by small number of individuals that are cleaved from a larger population. Now, what is this founder effect? Alright, so in America or in US, they have this what they call Amish population. Alright, so this Amish population, so in this population that we have right here, the frequency of having a sixth finger, which is called polydactyly, is increased due to the idea that the mother population of that on the story of that is the mother population, like the one that we have right here. So this group of people or this group of organisms that we have right here is separated away from their mother population. Now this group, all right, so this group that we have right here be able to reproduce, all right, in the long run. Then what can you expect about this what can you expect on the next generation that they can have here on this new population? All right, so probably we have the same answer, and you are right that they are all become yellow. All right, they all become yellow, and eventually on the next generation, it might we can safely say that this particular color of gene, or this gene color that we have right here, will likely to disappear in the long run, leaving only less diverse group of organism that we have right here. Alright, so this is a loss of genetic variability in the long run. Okay, so in the Amish population that we have right here, instead of eradicating this particular genetic defect, which is called the polydactyly, due to the idea that there is no genetic variation in the population, just like what we have right here, so the polydactyly appearance or frequency of having polydactyly in the offspring is now increased. Alright, due to the idea that this population are somehow isolated and they be able to, or there is no genetic variation in the long run. Okay, so that is your founder effect. Alright, so as you can see, founder effect and bottleneck effect is different from each other. Alright, so one example of a process in the genetic drift is what they call isolation. Now, these two squirrel that we have right here on the picture, these two squirrel that we have right here is separated by the Grand Canyon in the process. So due to the transformation of the land on the particular area, these two squirrels that we have right here, their ancestors were separated, then they be able to produce new offspring due to that they be able to adapt to that new environment that they live. So both of them have new environment now. So as you can see here, they are both these two squirrel that we have right here, they are both squirrel, but they look different from each other, and that's the fact, or due to the fact that they have been isolated due to the formation of ravine in the Grand Canyon. Alright, so that is the story of this squirrel that we have right here. So these are two different species of squirrel, and these two species are product of this isolation event. Alright, so now to conclude, alright, the genetic drift. So genetic drift is the effect of this genetic drift is larger. The effect of this genetic drift is larger in a small population. Why? It's because smaller population have smaller variations of genes. Alright, take note that one. But in larger population, the effect of genetic drift is very small. Why? Because in a larger population, there are a lot of variation of genes. Then therefore, smaller effect of genetic drift. Alright, so when there is a bottleneck effect or if there is a founder effect, so what happens is in the larger population, the effect of genetic drift is very, very small. Alright, so basically, that is the genetic drift. Right. Next one. The third one is mutation. So we will not go more about this one because we have encountered this one before on the previous video that we have. So in the previous video, I've explained already how mutation works, and mutation in the long run creates, it creates genetic variation. It creates a genetic variation. Now, once you create this genetic variation on the organism by changing the genes in their DNA, you create another group of organisms. So, meaning to say, mutation is one of the potent agent of, this is one potent agent of evolution. So mutation. Now, in some cases, mutation can be gene mutation or chromosomal mutation. So it depends. So most of the time, and in evolution, gene mutation is likely seen on some group of organisms. So for example, in humans and chimpanzees, we have only 2% in difference in terms of genes. We have 2% of difference, and those difference that we have right here, that only 2% that we have right there is somehow created us to become human and created them to become chimpanzees. So these mutations are very important ingredient in evolution. So mutation, and mutation happens in DNA and in chromosome. That's the third one. Then the fourth one is the gene flow. So gene flow is the transfer of genes from a gene pool of one population to another. So a gene pool is a set of genes that is present, or the variation of genes that is present in a population. So for example, if population A has this gene pool, then the population B, so if genes from population A will be transferred on population B, so let's change color. So let's use green. So in population B, what happens is there will be a complete different gene pool that we have right here. So let's use orange. So so what you see now on population B, so what you see now on population B is a complete different gene pool now, with the addition of the red one that we have right here, which was taken, or which was transferred from the first population that we have right here. Now, gene flow can be observed in human beings. So now, if humans tend to migrate, and immigrate, so somehow, something like that, they tend to change the gene pool in that particular population. So for example, if I be able to work abroad and be able to form a family in that particular place, then therefore, I transfer my genes from this population here in the Philippines to the group of population, whatever place that I will go. For example, in the US. So if I work there and then make a family there, so therefore, I transferred, or I put the genes from this particular population here in the Philippines and transferred it to another group of population, therefore increasing the variation of genes in that particular area. So for example, in US, there are a lot of races that is residing there. So therefore, one example there is California. California has a population of millions, something like that, and it contains different races, and these races that you see there creates variation in the gene pool. So you know what I mean. So gene pool. So if you think of a swimming pool and the water is in it, the water is the genes, and the water itself contains different variation of these particular genes that we have right here. So That's the gene flow. Now, another thing that you should take note with regards to the gene flow is that gene flow may change the frequency or range of the alleles in that population due to migration of individuals. Alright, so logically speaking, when you add something on that particular population, therefore you increase that frequency. Alright, so you increase the frequency of that allele in that particular population. They are now more varied. They are now more varied than before. Alright, so and the population that you left in that particular area. So for example, this is the population. The one that you have left. Alright, so this one, the one that we have earlier. So the population there or the alleles there will now become less varied. Alright, somehow in the long run. Okay, so in this case, gene flow can contribute to the change in frequency of these particular alleles. Okay, now and take note, just like what I've said. So gene flow contributes to the increase in variability of these alleles. Alright, it promotes new combination of traits. For example, if an American and a Filipina woman will likely to get married, so their offspring will likely to be varied, and a combination of those traits that is seen from Americans and seen from Filipinos, those combinations of traits that we have right there can contribute to this variability in the long run. Alright, for example, European and American, African American, something like that. So it contributes to this variability. Now, in a population, so a population that is more varied the population that is more varied is a result of so many combination of traits that happen there in the long run. Alright, so that's the gene flow. Alright, one example of that is pollination. Now, when a plant is pollinated by an agent of pollination, we have here the bees. So their pollens are stuck in this particular insect and then be able to transfer to another group of flowers. Alright, and because of that particular event, they be able to form variation or increases variability of this particular plant that we have right here. Alright, so this pollen is now transferred to another group of plant, then therefore it is added now to the gene pool of that particular population. Next one. Alright, so dispersion. Alright, so dispersion of seeds creates variation in the long run. Alright, so when you disperse the seeds by water, by wind, or whatever it is, on the method of dispersion that you know, so what happens there is this particular gene that is carried by that seed will now be part of a new population, thus increasing the variability of genes and alleles in that particular group. Alright, so dispersion. And as I've said earlier, human migration is one of the best example here in gene flow. Alright, so if you happen to notice, the first human came from Africa, and it gets they migrate due to the idea that this planet changes all the time. Alright, so if the planet changes, then it affects the resources that they have in that particular place. Then they migrate, they find greener pastures, and they be able to settle on that area, create family or create new population there. And until the time that they be able to migrate from Asia to Americas, including the islands here in the Pacific, so they be able to create certain or they be able to create an increased variation in different populations that we find in these particular regions of the earth. Alright, so because of this particular migration process, we create a larger and more varied gene pools that we have. Alright, so with that, all those things that we have talked about, all those mechanics of evolutions that we have. So by the way, I forgot, we have the fifth one, which is the non-random mating. It's also part of this one, non-random mating. So mating is always random. That's the reason why we have a lot of sperm, and there is a random thing that the number of sperms affects what kind of trait that the offspring will likely to inherit. So that is random. Now in a non-random mating, what happens here is you eradicate heterozygous or heterozygotes. Alright, so in non-random mating, you eradicate heterozygotes. For example, we have here the heterozygous stall that we have right here. Okay, so this heterozygous stall is eliminated in non-random mating. So it doesn't change the allele frequency, but what happens here is it increases the chances of having a homozygotes in a particular offspring. So for example, we have a homozygous tall, we have here homozygous short. So there will be no heterozygotes in the long run. Alright, so or even since the heterozygotes are not here anymore, we can safely say that we can eliminate one of the dominant traits like the one that we have right here, or even the recessive trait. So that is non-random mating. Alright, so now these 5 mechanisms that we have discussed right here, so is part of what they call microevolution. Now, if you remember our video about macroevolution, so it talks about the larger scale of evolutionary process that happened in an organism. Now, if you take a look at the genetic level, alright, if you take a look at the allele level of that particular evolutionary process, so therefore, this level in which these organisms evolved genetically is now what they call microevolution. Alright, so these minor changes in the allele frequency in a population contributes to this what they call microevolution. So basically, we can say that this is an opposite of your macroevolution. Alright, so with that, that's the end of our video today. So I hope you did learn something from this one. Now, if you do have questions about, if you want to know something that is confusing on this particular video lesson that we have, you can write it down in the comment section that we have right here. Alright, so shout out to my students. Merry Christmas, everyone. So I hope you find time in watching my video lessons that we have right here. Alright, so with that, let's see each other to the next video, or on the next video that we have. So that's it. Goodbye, everyone, and don't forget to smile. Alright, so have a nice day.